All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We are picking up right where we left off. If you were with us for part one, we spent a lot of time up in the clouds.
High up? Yeah.
We were looking at the vision, that big picture of Viksit Bharat.
Right, the architect's rendering.
Yeah.
Pretty pictures, big dreams, lots of glass and steel in the imagination.
Exactly. But today we put on the hard hats. We are moving from the vision to the action.
Okay.
Specifically, we're tackling Kartavya 1, economic growth. And honestly, looking at the sheer volume of schemes here, manufacturing, infrastructure, MSME support, this feels less like a budget speech and more like an industrial blueprint.
It is. It absolutely is. And for the folks listening, especially if you're tracking this for UPSC or just, trying to understand where the money's actually going, this is the meat and potatoes.
Yeah.
We're calling this deep dive the factory and the framework because we're analyzing the hard assets, the physical stuff.
The stuff you can kick.
The things you can kick, the things that burn fuel, and the things that employ millions of people on factory floors.
It really is that transition from planning to building. We have a massive amount of ground to cover today. So we're going to break this down into 3 huge pillars that came out of the budget speech.
Okay.
First, the big 7 manufacturing sectors. This is where the government is placing its biggest bets. Second, the MSME push, which frankly looks totally different from previous years.
Oh, it's a complete pivot. It's moving from sort of protection to promotion. We'll definitely get into that.
And finally, the skeleton of the whole thing, infrastructure and cities. But before we get into the weeds, just remind us of the mission here. Why are we going this deep?
Because the what is easy. You can read the what in the newspaper headlines. Yeah. Government allocates 10,000 crore to BioPharma. Okay, fine.
Right.
But for the exam and for actual economic literacy, you need the why. Why BioPharma? Why now? And crucially, what is the structural problem this specific chunk of money is trying to solve?
That's the exam link?
That's the exam link. That's what gets you the marks in GS Paper 3. You have to understand the economic necessity behind the policy.
So let's dive in. We are starting with the heavy hitters, manufacturing. But the government isn't just saying, make more stuff. They've got a very specific list, the strategic and frontier sectors.
Correct. They have identified 7 specific sectors. This isn't a shotgun approach, it's a sniper approach. They are targeting areas where India has either a strategic vulnerability,
Meaning we import too much?
We import too much and it puts our national security at risk, or a massive future opportunity that we just cannot afford to miss.
And for everyone listening, we've got a memory hook for this section to keep these sectors locked in your brain. It is BioPharma, SHAKTI, and the chip war.
Catchy. It sounds like the title of a geopolitical thriller.
I try. So let's start with the first part of that hook. BioPharma, SHAKTI. This feels new. I mean, we've heard of pharma exports for years. India is the pharmacy of the world. But this specific scheme, BioPharma, SHAKTI, has an outlay of 10,000 crore. What's going on here? Why do we need a new scheme?
This is such a pivotal shift. And to understand it, you have to look at the why, which the finance minister explicitly mentioned in the speech. There is a shift in the disease burden of the country.
A shift in disease burden. So you mean we aren't just fighting malaria and TB anymore?
Precisely. Historically, our health policy was focused on communicable diseases, infections, viruses, things that spread from person to person. But the budget speech notes a massive shift towards non-communicable diseases, or NCDs.
So we're talking about diabetes, cancer.
Diabetes, cancer, autoimmune disorders, cardiovascular issues, all of that.
Okay, so the population is getting older, lifestyles are changing, we're eating more processed food, and the sicknesses we're getting are changing.
Exactly. And here's the economic kicker. The medicines for these are completely different. India is the pharmacy of the world because we are the kings of generics.
Right.
That involves chemistry. You mix specific chemicals in a vat, you get a pill like aspirin or an antibiotic.
Yeah.
We are world class at that. We can do it cheaper and better than anyone.
But treating cancer,
Right.
That's a different ballgame.
A totally different ballgame. Treating cancer or autoimmune diseases often requires biologics or biosimilars.
Okay, you have to unpack that difference for us. What makes a biologic so much harder to make than a generic?
It's right there in the name. Biologics aren't just mixed chemicals. They're derived from living organisms.
Living organisms.
Yeah, they're large, complex molecules, often proteins, that are grown inside living cells. You aren't mixing ingredients in a factory. You are farming cells in a lab. They're incredibly sensitive to temperature, light, process changes.
So it's the difference between baking a cake from a mix versus, I don't know, growing a prize-winning orchid.
Even more complex than that, I'd say. It is infinitely harder to make, infinitely more expensive, and much, much higher value. If India stays stuck in generics, we lose the future of medicine.
We become the Kodak of the pharmaceutical world.
Exactly. Great at the old tech, oblivious to the new one. That's a perfect analogy.
So BioPharma SHAKTI is basically the government saying, we need to upgrade our lab equipment from chemistry sets to biology labs.
That is a great way to put it. The scheme, Strategy for Healthcare Advancement Through Knowledge, Technology, and Innovation, that's SHATI, it puts 10,000 crore over 5 years into building this exact ecosystem.
And it's not just subsidies for production, right?
No, not at all. They're establishing 3 new National Institutes of Pharmaceutical Education and Research, the NIDERs, and they're upgrading 7 existing ones.
So that's the education infrastructure. You're trying to create the scientists who can actually run these bioreactors.
You need the people. And, perhaps even more importantly, they're creating a network of over 1,000 accredited clinical trial sites.
1,000. Why is that the bottleneck? Why do we need so many trial sites?
Because you cannot develop a biologic drug without massive, credible clinical trials. Think about it. Biologics vary slightly from batch to batch because they come from living things.
Right, they're not identical.
They're not. So to prove they are safe and effective, you need data from thousands of patients. Right now, Indian companies often have to go to Europe or the US to conduct these trials because our data isn't always accepted, or we just don't have the specialized centers.
And that costs a fortune.
A fortune. By building the trial infrastructure here, you keep the R&D spend in India. You build that expertise domestically.
And I noticed in the speech they mentioned the regulator, too. The CDSQO.
The Central Drugs Standard Control Organization.
Yeah.
They're creating a dedicated scientific review cadre.
Which is bureaucratic speak for what exactly?
It means hiring people who actually understand the science.
Ah.
I mean, if you were inventing a complex biological drug for immunotherapy, you can't have your approval stuck in a file for 3 years on the desk of a generalist bureaucrat. You need a regulator who understands the science and can approve it quickly to meet global standards.
So it's about reducing the time to market.
Which is just as important as the funding.
Oh, absolutely. So that's the biopharma part of the memory hook. Let's move to the chip war. We're talking about the India Semiconductor Mission, or ISM, but this is ISM 2.0.
Right. ISM 1.0 was about getting our foot in the door. It was about establishing capabilities. We saw the big announcements, Tata, Micron, and so on.
Yeah.
But the budget this year explicitly allocates 1,000 crore for ISM 2.0 in 2026-27 alone. The focus has evolved.
How so? I mean, we are still building the factories from the first round.
We are, but the government is looking ahead. ISM 1.0 was largely about assembly, testing, and packaging, what the industry calls OSAT or ATMP. It's the back end of manufacturing.
So the less complicated part.
It's important it creates jobs, but it's the lower end of the value chain. ISM 2.0 is targeting the full stack.
Full stack? They're borrowing a term from software engineering.
Essentially, yes. In software, a full-stack developer does everything from the database to the user interface. In semiconductors, full-stack means developing Indian intellectual property, IP. It means manufacturing the equipment that makes the chips. It means manufacturing the specialized gases and materials needed for chip fabrication.
So we're not just putting the chips together anymore. We want to design the blueprint and build the machines that build the chips.
That's exactly. I mean, think about it like a restaurant.
Yeah.
ISM 1.0 was training us to be the line cooks. We assemble the meal.
Right.
ISM 2.0 wants us to be the executive chef who writes the menu, that's the IP, and the engineer who builds the oven. That's the equipment.
Because if you just cook, you can be replaced. If you own the recipe, you have the power.
Precisely. If you look at GS Paper 3, under indigenization of technology, this is the prime example. It's about reducing import dependence on the most critical component of the modern world. If you can design the IP, you own the value chain. If you just assemble, you are just a glorified labor contractor.
And speaking of raw materials, that leads us directly to the next point in our strategic manufacturing list.
Yep.
Critical minerals.
This is huge. And for the UPSC veterans listening, this is going to ring a bell.
The budget announced rare earth corridors, and they named 4 specific states: Odisha, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, and Tamil Nadu.
Now pause and ask yourself, why those 4 states? Why not Jharkhand or Chhattisgarh, where we usually think of mining coal and iron?
I'm guessing it has to do with the coast. All four are coastal states?
It has everything to do with the coast. This connects directly to the 2022 prelims question, I think it was number 28, regarding monazite sands.
Right, monazite.
Monazite is a mineral found in the beach sands of these coastal states. It is a source of rare earths and, crucially, thorium.
Ah, the thorium connection. We've been hearing about India's thorium reserves for decades as the future of our nuclear program.
Yes, but even before we get to nuclear power, those sands contain lanthanum, cerium, neodymium, the stuff you need for the magnets in electric vehicles, for wind turbines, for missile guidance systems.
So these rare earth corridors are designed to exploit those coastal sand resources.
The whole value chain. They're setting up the full value chain here. Mining, processing, research, and then manufacturing.
It's just interesting how geography dictates policy here. You can't just put a rare earth corridor anywhere. You have to go where the sand is.
You do. And they are backing it up with tax breaks. The budget speech, paragraph 153, explicitly provides a basic customs duty, or BCD, exemption on capital goods required for processing critical minerals.
What's the logic there? If we have the minerals here, why do we need a tax break on imports?
Because digging up the sand is the easy part. Separating the rare earth element from the rest of the dirt is incredibly difficult. It's toxic, and it requires high-tech machinery that India does not make yet.
I see.
So the government's saying, we will let you import these processing machines duty-free. They want to encourage companies to set up the processing plants here in India.
So we dig it up here, we process it here, and we use it here. That's the goal.
That's the goal. Instead of exporting raw sand to China and then buying back the finished magnet at a huge markup.
Which is critical for defense, electronics, and the whole clean energy transition. Okay, we've got biopharma, chips, and rare earths. Let's touch on the chemical parks. The budget mentions launching 3 new plug-and-play chemical parks.
Yeah, plug-and-play is the key word there. One of the biggest hurdles in India for setting up a chemical plant is environmental clearance and land acquisition.
It takes years.
It takes years. And chemical plants require massive effluent treatment facilities. You can't just dump this stuff in a river. It's a huge capital cost.
So a plug-and-play park means?
It means the government acquires the land, builds the roads, builds the power station, and crucially, builds the common effluent treatment plant, the CETP. They get all the environmental clearances beforehand.
So the company just comes in, builds their shed?
Plugs into the grid and the waste pipe.
Yeah.
And starts manufacturing. It cuts down the setup time from years to months.
And why chemicals? Is it just about making plastics?
It's about feedstock. We import a massive amount of chemical feedstock. If you want to be a manufacturing superpower, you can't be importing the basic ingredients for your plastics, your pharmaceuticals, your fertilizers. You need domestic security of supply.
It's all about securing the supply chain. Before we move off manufacturing, I saw a nod to the legacy sectors, too. We are building these new shiny chip plants, but what about the old industrial towns?
That's the rejuvenation of legacy industrial clusters scheme. They're targeting 200 legacy clusters. Think of the old textile towns like Tirupur or the leather hubs like Kanpur.
Places that have been industrial for 100 years.
Exactly. And a lot of them are struggling. They're losing competitiveness to Vietnam and Bangladesh because their tech is old, their boilers are inefficient, their local roads are full of potholes.
Right.
This scheme is an attempt to retrofit them, upgrade the technology, fix the common infrastructure so they don't die out while we build the new shiny stuff. We can't afford to let our existing employment hubs collapse.
And one final number that jumped out at me in the at-a-glance document under manufacturing, technology and national security.
Yes, that line item had a massive jump. 9,800 crore.
Yeah.
It's a very clear signal towards the indigenization of defense technology.
It's not just DRDO anymore.
No, space and defense are becoming manufacturing sectors in their own right, not just strategic assets. We are seeing startups building rockets and drones. This fund fuels that fire.
So that's the factory. BioPharma, SHAKTI, and the chip war. We are moving up the value chain, from generics to biologics, from assembly to IP, and from importing minerals to processing our own sands.
The factories need supply chains. A big Tata or Maruti plant doesn't make every single screw and washer. They buy them. And in India, that supply chain is built on the backs of millions of small businesses. Which brings us to the second pillar, the MSME push.
The champion SMEs. The memory hook we have for this one is credit and compliance.
This is a very sophisticated part of the budget. For a long time, Indian policy suffered from what economists call the dwarfism problem.
Dwarfism. That sounds a little harsh.
It's an economic term. It refers to companies that stay small intentionally.
Oh.
We had policies that protected small companies only if they stayed small. If you were below a certain turnover, you got tax breaks, you got freedom from inspections. But the moment you grew 1 rupee over that limit, you got hit with the full force of Indian bureaucracy.
So nobody wanted to grow. It's the Peter Pan syndrome of corporate India.
That's a great term for it. Exactly. This budget tries to flip that. It's moving from protection to promotion. They want MSMEs to grow into giants, and they are using a three-pronged approach to clear the obstacles.
Okay, let's break down the 3 prongs. Prong 1, equity support.
The SME Growth Fund, 10,000 crore. And this is equity, not debt. It's investment.
So they're taking a stake in the company.
They are. They're looking for companies that have the potential to be future champions, mid-sized companies that could be the next global giant, and giving them capital to scale up.
Plus a top-up of 2,000 crore for the Self-Reliant India Fund, which I think focuses more on the micro-enterprises.
Yes, more on risk capital for the smaller guys.
Okay, so prong 1 is, here is money to grow. What is prong 2?
Prong 2 is liquidity support. And this addresses the single biggest killer of small businesses in India. It isn't lack of profit, it's lack of cash.
Delayed payments.
The classic story. You supply goods to a big company or the government, and they don't pay you for 90 days, 120 days.
But you have to pay your staff every month.
You have to pay your staff, you have to buy raw materials, you go bankrupt, waiting for your own money.
So what's the fix here?
The solution is TReDS. That's TReDS, the Trade Receivables Discounting System.
Okay, let's unpack TReDS, because the budget makes it mandatory now for CPSEs. How does it work, in simple terms?
Imagine you're a small business. You make bolts. You sell 10 lakhs worth of bolts to a central public sector enterprise, a CPSE, let's say BHEL.
Okay.
They give you an invoice that says, we will pay you in 90 days. You can't wait 90 days.
I need to buy more steel today to make more bolts for another customer.
Exactly. So you take that invoice to the TReDS platform. It's an online auction house for invoices. Banks and other financial institutions look at the invoice and say, okay, BHEL owes you 10 lakh. BHEL is reliable. I'll give you 9.8 lakh right now, cash in your hand today.
And they collect the full 10 lakh from BHEL in 90 days.
They do. So you get your cash immediately, minus a small discount, which is basically the interest. It's called invoice discounting.
Right. And the big reform here is that the government is mandating that all CPSEs must use this system. They're also linking it to the GEM portal, the government e-marketplace.
Which is huge. If you sell to the government, you get access to this instant cash facility.
And I saw a note about securitization of TReDS receivables. Now, that sounds like some Wall Street stuff. Why is that in a budget for small businesses?
It is sophisticated financial engineering, but it's really clever. See, eventually the banks buying these invoices might run out of credit limits for BHEL or NTPC. They can only buy so much debt from one company. Securitization means taking all those thousands of little debts on the TReDS platform, bundling them together into a security, kind of like a bond, and selling them to other investors like mutual funds, insurance companies.
Ah, so it creates a secondary market, it brings in more money.
It opens up a massive new pools of capital. It ensures that the TReDS platform never runs dry. There is always money available to buy the invoices. It creates a truly liquid market for MSME debt.
That is the credit part of the memory hook. Very clear. Now for the compliance part, prong 3.
This is the professional support. The budget introduces the concept of corporate Mitras.
Corporate Mitras. I love the name. It sounds a lot like bank Mitras.
That's the analogy.
Yeah.
Bank Mitras help with financial inclusion in villages, local people, helping their neighbors open bank accounts. Corporate Mitras are designed for Tier 2 and Tier 3 towns.
So the industrial hubs in the hinterland?
Right. If you were a small factory owner in Moradabad or Salem, hiring a big city law firm or a top-tier accounting firm to handle your GST, your labor codes, your tax filings, it's prohibitively expensive.
And it's scary.
It's very scary. So you just don't do it. You stay informal, you pay in cash.
And if you stay informal, you can't get bank loans, you can't use TReDS, you can't get government contracts.
You stay a dwarf. Corporate Mitras will be a cadre of professionals developed by institutes like ICI, the Chartered Accountants, and ICSI, the company secretaries, who will be based in these towns and offer affordable, compliant services.
It's like a subsidized CFO for small businesses.
It's exactly that. It lowers the barrier to formalization. If you have a trusted corporate Mitra handling your paperwork, you are not afraid to register your company and grow.
This directly connects to GS Paper 3 employment generation. I mean, MSMEs are the biggest employer after agriculture. If they grow, jobs grow.
And it addresses that growth trap we talked about. By solving the credit issue with TReDS and the compliance issue with corporate Mitras, you remove the friction that keeps Indian companies small.
So we have the factories, the big seven, and we have the engines, the MSMEs. Now we need the skeleton, the physical structure that holds it all together, infrastructure and cities.
And here, the theme is decentralization. The budget is very clear. We need to look beyond the metros.
The phrase they used was city economic regions, or CERs, focusing on cities with a population over 5 lakhs, so Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities.
We are seeing a very conscious shift. Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, they are saturated. They are overburdened. The traffic is bad. The pollution is bad. The cost of living is sky high.
And the infrastructure can't keep up.
It can't. So the budget allocates grants for urban local bodies specifically to develop these new growth hubs.
This reminds me of the smart cities discussion, but maybe more regionally focused.
It ties back to that 2020 GS1 question about flooding in Hyderabad and Pune. Remember that?
I do.
That question was all about what happens when urbanization is unplanned, when you let the city grow first and then try to build the sewers and the storm drain.
It's a complete disaster.
Exactly. By focusing on Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities now, the government is trying to build the infrastructure before the massive population explosion happens there. It's preemptive urbanization planning.
And connecting these cities is the next big piece, connectivity. We have roads, obviously, but the budget really highlights high-speed rail and waterways.
The high-speed rail announcement is very ambitious. 7 new high-speed rail corridors.
Can you name a few of those for us?
Sure. Mumbai-Pune, Delhi-Varanasi, Varanasi-Siliguri, Hyderabad-Bengaluru.
These aren't just train rides, are they? They're economic corridors.
That's the key. They connect economic nodes. Think about Hyderabad and Bengaluru. Both are massive tech hubs. If you can get from one to the other in 2 hours instead of 8 hours, those two economies effectively merge.
You create a massive super region.
It completely changes the labor market, the housing market, everything. You can live in a smaller town between them and commute to either city.
And then there's the blue economy, waterways.
This is all about logistics cost. Moving cargo by water is significantly cheaper and cleaner than by road or rail. The target is to increase the share of inland and coastal shipping from 6% to 12% by 2047.
A doubling of capacity.
It's a huge shift. They mentioned operationalizing 20 new national waterways. But one detail stood out to me as well.
The ship repair ecosystem.
Yes, a ship repair ecosystem of Varanasi and Patna.
Wait, Varanasi and Patna, why they're, they're in landlocked states.
The Ganges, National Waterway 1. This is the Providaya link, the rise of the East. The government wants to use the Ganges to move freight from the coast deep into the hinterland.
Okay.
But if you have barges moving up and down the river, they break down. They need maintenance. They need repairs.
And right now, where do they go?
They probably have to go all the way back to a coastal port like Haldia. By building ship repair facilities in Varanasi, in UP, and Patna, in Bihar, you are creating heavy industrial activity deep in the hinterland. You're creating high-skilled welding and engineering jobs in Bihar.
So you're integrating the East into the national logistics grid in a very real way.
A very tangible way.
I have to mention the seaplanes. It sounds like something out of a James Bond movie, but there is a seaplane VGF scheme.
Viability gap funding. Yes, it sounds a bit niche, but look at the map of India. We have a massive coastline, huge river systems, lots of lakes. Building an airport in a remote island or a riverside town costs thousands of crores.
A seaplane just needs a dock.
Exactly. It's a very low-cost way to connect remote areas for tourism and last-mile connectivity. And the key constraint in the budget was incentives for indigenous manufacturing. They don't just want us flying seaplanes. They want us building them here.
Of course. And finally, under infrastructure, we have to talk about energy, the fuel for the skeleton.
A few key things here. First, nuclear power. The budget extended the basic customs duty exemption for goods required for nuclear projects all the way to 2035.
That's a long extension, a decade. Usually budgets look just 1 year ahead.
And that's the point. It signals long-term policy stability. You cannot plan a nuclear power plant, which takes 8 to 10 years to build, if you're worried the tax code is going to change next year. This tells global investors, go ahead, the rules are locked in.
Then there's CCUS, carbon capture, utilization, and storage, 20,000 crore.
This is very high-tech. It's for the hard-to-abate sectors. We can put solar panels on a house, but you cannot run a steel plant or a cement kiln on batteries easily. You need intense heat. You usually burn coal or gas.
So they're always going to emit carbon.
Unless you capture it. CCUS technology literally captures the CO2 coming out of the chimney and either stores it deep underground or turns it into other useful chemicals. It is very expensive right now.
So this 20,000 crore fund is to make that technology viable for Indian industry.
Drive down the cost curve, yes.
And one small, but I thought very interesting detail, a customs exemption on sodium antimonate?
No, you really read the fine print.
It just stood out. Why that specific chemical? What is that?
It's used for solar glass. We make solar panels in India, but we often import the specialized glass that covers them. To make that high transmission glass, you need sodium antimonate as a fining agent.
I see.
By cutting the duty on this one specific raw material, they encourage the glass manufacturing to happen in India. It's another small link in the supply chain being localized.
It's these little details, sodium antimonate, monazite sands, the clinical trials for BioPharma, that really show the granularity of this budget.
It's not just Make in India as a slogan. It's an engineering document. Here are the specific 5 hurdles to making this specific product in India, and here are the 5 specific policy adjustments to fix them.
Before we wrap up the hard assets, we need to touch on the soft layer that makes it all work. Governance. Specifically, trust-based governance.
This is the grease in the gears. You can build the best factory in the world, but if the customs official holds your imported parts for 20 days, you lose money.
The budget announced a reform for AEO's authorized economic operators.
The duty deferral period was increased from 15 days to 30 days for Tier 2 and 3 AEOs.
Wait, what does that mean in plain English for a business?
An AEO is a trusted importer, someone with a clean track record. The government is saying to them, look, if you are trusted, bring your goods in now, use them, sell them, and then pay the tax 30 days later.
It's basically an interest-free loan from the government for a month.
It is. And it improves cash flow significantly for manufacturers.
And a review of FEMA, the Foreign Exchange Management Act.
Just simplifying cross-border trade. Again, just reduce the friction, make it easier to do business.
So let's summarize part 2. It's been a whirlwind of technical details.
It has. We have the factories, the big 7 strategic sectors, and for everyone listening, remember the hook. BioPharma, SHAKTI, and the chip war. We are shifting to biologics and full-stack semiconductor IP, and we are leveraging our geography for rare earths.
Then we have the engines, the champion MSMEs. The hook there was credit and compliance, the SME growth fund for equity, TReDS for liquidity so you get paid fast.
And corporate Mitras for handling the paperwork so you're not afraid to grow.
And finally, we have the skeleton infrastructure, shifting focus to Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, the city economic regions, connecting them with high-speed rail and waterways.
And powering it all with long-term nuclear and green tech like CCUS investments.
So here is the so what for our listeners. India is building the hardware. We are laying the tracks, digging the mines, and building the labs.
The infrastructure is being laid out to move goods cheaper with waterways and faster with rail. The manufacturing policy is targeted at high-value tech, like chips and biopharma. And the MSME policy is designed to let companies grow without fear.
But, and there's always a but in Indian economics.
This raises the most critical question of all. We can import the machines for the chip plant. We can build the building for the biopharma lab. We can lay the tracks for the bullet train.
But machines don't run themselves.
Exactly. Innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum. Who is going to design that full-stack IP for the semiconductor? Who is going to run the complex clinical trial for the new biologic drug? Who is going to be the corporate Mitra?
The hardware is completely useless without the software. And in an economy, the software is the people.
It's the human capital.
Right.
That is the missing piece of the puzzle so far. You can throw billions at factories, but if you don't have the skilled youth to run them, you just have expensive, empty buildings.
And that is exactly where we're going in the next part of this deep dive.
Part 3 is the human capital push. We're going to look at education, skilling, and the massive focus on youth in this budget.
It's going to be a good one. It connects the factory right back to the student. But for now, review your memory hooks. BioPharma, SHAKTI, the chip war, credit and compliance.
And remember the geography. Monazite in the coastal states, ship repair in Varanasi and Patna. Connect the dots for the exam.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We'll see you in part 3.
See ya.